The market on Orange Station was always loud and busy, full of bright lights, strange smells, and voices from many worlds. Ships came and went. Traders argued over prices. Robots rolled between stalls carrying boxes. Music played from speakers that never fully worked. In all of that noise and life, nobody noticed the small shape sitting near a broken pipe on the ground. Nobody except the human. His name was Jace. He was a traveler, a cargo runner, and someone who had seen many bad things in the galaxy. But what he saw that day stopped him like a wall in his path. Under the pipe, where dirty water dripped slowly, a little alien child sat in the dust. Her skin was light violet, covered with gray powder and mud. Her clothes were torn. Her small hands were shaking. She was scooping wet mud from the floor and putting it into her mouth. For a moment, Jace thought his eyes were lying to him. Then his chest grew tight. He took one step closer. People walked around him, annoyed, pushing past. Nobody else stopped. Nobody else looked. They all acted like the child did not exist at all. The girl looked up at him with wide, shining eyes. They were big and round, like polished stone. Fear lived inside them, but also something else. Hunger. Deep, long hunger. She froze like a small animal, waiting to be kicked away. Jace did not move fast. He slowly knelt down, so he would not scare her. He spoke in soft, simple trade tongue. He asked why she was eating mud. The child opened her mouth. Her lips moved. Her throat strained. But no sound came out. Nothing. Only silence. Jace felt a shock run through him. He had seen wounded soldiers, burned cities, broken ships. But this silence hurt more than all of that. The girl tried again. She shaped words that no one could hear. Her hands trembled. Tears mixed with the dirt on her face. She looked ashamed, like not having a voice was something wrong with her. He shook his head gently and smiled, so she would not feel afraid. He opened his pack and took out a ration bar. It was nothing special, cheap food for long flights. But to her, it looked like treasure. He broke it in half and held it toward her. For a moment, she did not trust it. She stared at the food. Then hunger won. She grabbed it and ate fast, too fast, like someone who did not know when the next meal would come. She did not say thank you. She could not. Silence wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. A nearby stall owner shouted at her to go away. He called her dirty. He said she scared customers. Jace did not even look at the man. His eyes stayed on the girl. He saw her thin arms. He saw the bones under her skin. He saw small cuts on her hands. He could count her ribs under her shirt. He asked where her family was. Again, no voice. Instead, the girl reached out and took his hand. Her small fingers were rough and cold. She tugged at him gently, asking him to follow. He stood. She led him away from the bright market lights and into darker halls below the station. The crowds thinned. The noise faded. Lights flickered. The air smelled old and wet, full of rust and damp metal. Jace realized she was taking him to the place where people only go when they have nowhere else left. They stopped near a wall covered in dust. The girl knelt and picked up a piece of broken plastic. She used it to draw slowly in the dirt. First, she wrote a name in simple letters. Sarah. Then she drew a tall figure next to a smaller one. Both had the same big eyes. After that, she drew a small mark across the taller one's throat. She touched her own neck. Then she pointed down the hallway. Jace understood. Her mother. Her mother had lost her voice. He did not know how. He did not know why. But now he needed to know. His heart felt heavy, but also full of heat. The kind of heat that pushes humans to do something, even when it is dangerous, even when others walk away. He squeezed the child's hand gently, nodded, and followed where she led him. And as they walked deeper into the dark of the station, one thought would not leave his mind. Why does a child have to eat mud? What happened to take her mother's voice? And who was cruel enough to make it happen? The path grew darker as Syrah led Jace deeper into the lower levels of the station. The metal walls were covered in stains and old messages. Pipes rattled overhead like tired bones. Somewhere far away, a machine hissed. The sound of the busy market disappeared behind them. Down here, the air was heavy and still, like the station itself was holding its breath. Syrah did not look back to see if Jace followed. She already trusted him. She walked with small, careful steps, still holding his hand. Her fingers felt fragile, like thin sticks that could break if he squeezed too hard. Jace made sure he didn't. He watched the child as they walked. She did not laugh, did not hum, did not make any sound at all. Most children, even tired ones, found a way to make noise. But Syrah moved in silence, almost like silence lived inside her now. He wondered how long she had not spoken. He wondered how long she had been eating mud. They reached an old bulkhead door that did not fully close. Syrah let go of his hand and slipped inside the gap. Jace followed her. The room beyond was made from welded scrap metal, broken crates, and hanging cloth. It was not really a home. It was just the only place left. Inside, a woman sat leaning against a wall. Her skin was the same violet color as Syrah's, but much paler, like life was slowly leaving it. Her eyes were tired but warm when she saw her daughter. Syrah rushed forward and hugged her. The woman wrapped weak arms around the child and held on tightly, like Syrah might disappear if she let go. Then the woman looked up at Jace. He saw the scar at her throat right away. It was thin and silver, running from one side of her neck to the other. It glowed faintly, as if some small machine slept under the skin. He understood that some kind of device had been used on her, something that took more than just flesh. The woman tried to speak. Her mouth opened. The muscles in her throat moved, but no sound came out, just like Syrah. But the silence here was heavier. It carried sorrow, sacrifice, and pain. Jace suddenly felt like speaking loudly would be rude, like shouting in a temple. So he stayed quiet too. The woman gave him a small nod of greeting. Jace returned the nod. He wanted to say many things, but did not know where to begin. Instead, Syrah moved to a small crate and pulled out an old, cracked tablet. The screen flickered when she touched it, but it still worked. The mother took the tablet slowly, with shaking hands. She began to type. The words appeared one by one, simple and broken, but powerful. Water. No money. My child dying. I sold my voice. She stopped and closed her eyes for a moment, as if the memory hurt more than the wound. Jace read every word slowly. He imagined Syrah lying weak, lips dry, breath shallow. He imagined the mother kneeling in front of powerful people who saw suffering as business. He imagined her signing something she didn't fully understand, only knowing one thing mattered. Syrah must live. The mother typed more. Voice is life in our people. Voice is memory. Voice is soul. Jace had heard of species like that. Some aliens sang to remember their history. Some spoke names only once in a lifetime. Some believed the voice carried the spirit. Taking it was like breaking the heart. She typed the last words with tears in her eyes. They took my voice for water. Syrah watched her mother, then looked at Jace as if asking a question without words. Not can you fix it? Not can you save us? Just a simple, painful one. Do you care? Jace sat down slowly on the floor, so he was at their level. He took a breath and let it out. He remembered human children on burned worlds, dust in their hair, asking for help without speaking. He remembered promising himself long ago that he would never walk away again. He reached into his bag and took out a water pouch. He gave it to Syrah first. She tried to hand it to her mother, but the woman shook her head, smiling, telling her to drink. Jace gently pushed it back toward the mother too, and soon they both drank, taking small, slow sips like water was something holy. Jace pointed gently to the scar on the mother's throat. Then he pointed upward toward the richer station levels, where the lights were brighter and water was clean. He raised his eyebrows, asking silently, "Who did this?" The mother typed 2 words, "Water Lords." Syrah pressed her forehead against her mother's shoulder. The mother placed a hand on the child's head. Both of them looked so small in that broken metal shelter, yet stronger than anyone he had seen in a long time. Jay stayed quiet for a moment. Then something changed inside him. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was simple and human. A line was drawn in his heart. He could leave, forget, go back to work, pretend he saw nothing. Or he could do what humans were famous for in every corner of the galaxy. Refuse. Refuse to accept this. Refuse to let a child eat mud. Refuse to let anyone sell. Jace did not leave the shelter right away, even after he decided what he would do. He stayed a moment longer and looked around the small metal room. Everything inside told a story. a cracked cup, a thin blanket, a pile of broken tools no one had the strength to repair. It was the kind of place people lived in only when every door before it had been closed. Sira sat beside her mother, always touching her, as if making sure she was still there. She kept one hand wrapped around her mother's arm, while the other hand traced small shapes on the floor. They were not words. They were circles and lines, maybe pieces of songs she could not sing anymore. The mother watched Jace carefully, not with fear, with question. Who was this human? Why had he stopped? Most others walked past. Some laughed. Some turned away. But this man had knelt down. He had listened to silence. Jace felt that heavy gaze. He understood it. She was not asking for charity. She was asking something deeper. Are you the kind of person who leaves? Or the kind who stays? He spoke softly, even though they could not answer with sound. He said his name. He told them he was a pilot. He told them humans were stubborn, sometimes foolish, but they tried to help when something felt wrong in their bones. They listened with their eyes, not their ears. Sira crawled closer to him and placed something small in his hand. It was a stone, not a regular stone. It was smooth, shaped by careful fingers, and had little lines carved into it. When he tilted it, it caught the weak light and shone faintly. Jace looked at her, confused for a second, then understood. It was a gift, the only kind she had. He closed his hand around it like it was priceless. He turned back to the mother. He pointed at her throat again, not demanding, only asking. She nodded slowly. She reached inside a small cloth bag and took out a thin metal card. When she touched it, a symbol glowed on its surface. It was the mark of the Water Lords. They did not just sell water. They owned fear. They controlled price, ration, access. They chose who lived in light and who crawled in shadow. They smiled in the upper decks while children in the lower levels drank from rusted pipes and ate mud to quiet empty stomachs. On the card was another symbol, small and cruel. Jace recognized it from old rumors. A voice harvester contract. Legal. Signed. Without mercy. He remembered stories he had heard in space stations and bars. A machine that could take the sound from a throat. Not only sound, culture, song, family memory. Everything tied to voice in some alien people. That voice would then be used in luxury entertainment, high art, or private collections of the rich. They would drink song like wine while the original owner lived in silence. He closed his eyes for a moment. He saw Sira's mother standing in a white room, lights too bright, needles of light touching her skin. He saw her looking at a water tank while her child lay pale and dry. He saw her nodding once, not because she wanted to, but because she had no other choice left in the universe. She had traded her voice for water, because a mother will burn her own heart before she lets her child die. Jace opened his eyes again. He felt a steady fire in his chest. He did not shout. He did not rage. His anger became calm and sharp. This was the kind of anger that builds bridges, moves crowds, breaks chains. He went to the doorway and looked out into the dark tunnel. Somewhere up there, metal halls were clean and full of light. Somewhere up there were fountains that ran all day for decoration, while children here licked moisture from pipes to survive. He felt the unfairness like a weight in his hands. Sira tugged on his sleeve. She pointed to the ceiling, then to her throat, then shook her head. She was not only telling him what happened. She was saying something else. Don't just feel sad. Do something. Jace knelt again, so he was eye level with her. He put both hands on her shoulders gently and nodded once more, slower this time, the kind of nod that means promise, not maybe. Sira's eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry loudly. She leaned forward and hugged him for only a second, then pulled back shyly. The mother watched them, her eyes shining. She pressed her hand to her chest, then touched the scar at her throat, then reached her hand toward him, palm open. He took it. Her grip was weak, but full of strength at the same time. She did not need words to say what she felt. Thank you for seeing us. Please be careful. Jay stood up. His shadow stretched long on the metal wall. He looked like a man walking towards something dangerous and not turning back. He did not yet know how he would fight water lords. He did not know how to return a stolen voice. But he knew one thing with perfect clarity. He would try. And across the galaxy, When a human says they will try, history often moves. He stepped out of the shelter and into the dim. Jace walked through the lower tunnels of the station with fast steps and a quiet face. On the inside, however, he was not quiet at all. His thoughts were loud. His heart felt heavy and hot at the same time. He kept seeing Sierra's small hands. He kept seeing the silver scar on her mother's throat. He kept hearing the silence that should have been a voice. He had seen many kinds of cruelty in the galaxy. He had seen pirates, dictators, and warlords. But this felt different. This was slow cruelty. This was daily cruelty. It did not shout. It whispered. It hid behind contracts, prices, and rules. It smiled in clean offices while children starved in shadows. He hated that kind of cruelty the most. He reached the brighter levels of the station again. People laughed here. Water ran in small artificial streams for decoration. Ice drinks were sold in tall glasses. Mist sprayed from vents to improve the mood. He watched a boy splash water at his friend, and both of them laughed hard, not knowing that just a few floors below, a child was licking mud because she had nothing else. Jace closed his eyes for a brief second and breathed out slowly. Anger wanted to explode, but he did not let it. He shaped it instead. He turned it into something focused. He went to his ship first. It was not big, not shiny, not famous, but was fast, strong, and had saved his life more than once. Inside it, he opened his old comm unit and began to send signals. They were short messages, almost like old habits waking up. He did not say much. Need help. Waterlords. Station Arhen. Bring truth. He sent them to people who owed him favors. To people who hated injustice. To people who remembered the same burned worlds he did. Some were humans. Some were not. But all of them trusted Jace enough to listen when he called. Next, he walked to the workers' ring. Here, the station looked different. The air felt warmer. The machines were louder. Faces were tired. Uniforms were stained. These were the people who kept the station alive and were paid the least for it. Jace talked to them in simple words. He did not tell them what to do. He told them what he saw. He spoke about a child eating mud. He spoke about a mother without a voice. He spoke about water that should belong to everyone. He did not shout, but his words spread fast. Workers talked to other workers. Mechanics whispered to cleaners. Security guards with honest eyes listened quietly and said nothing, which sometimes means everything. Rumors moved like wind through metal corridors. The Waterlords felt nothing at first. They sat in their tall, white tower that rose like a tooth from the center of the ring. Their floors were clean. Their windows looked out into space. They lived above the suffering they caused, high enough that they never had to see it. But the tower had weak points. Every tower does. Jace went to an old friend next. Her name was Lura, a tall insectoid engineer with bright yellow eyes. She had 6 arms and a calm voice that sounded like rain. She had worked once for the Waterlords and had left because she still had a conscience. She did not need a long story. I know, she said softly when he finished. I have seen too many silent throats. Together, they made a plan. Not a plan of guns and explosions. This was different. They wanted truth. They wanted light. They wanted everyone to see what had been hidden. Lura showed him the control lines on a hollow map. Thin blue veins for water. Thicker red lines for power. She smiled with a small bitterness. They think they control everything, she said, but they only control pipes and numbers. They do not control people forever. They gathered more helpers. A communications tech who had a brother die of thirst last year. A doctor who had treated too many dehydrated children. A clerk who had seen contracts that made her sick. No army. Just people who were tired of watching. Late in the station night cycle, the plan began. Power to the Waterlords' secondary pumps flickered and then stopped. Nothing exploded. Nothing burned. The tower kept working, but now alarms whispered inside its systems. At the same time, every public holo screen on every level began to show images. Not polished advertisements. Not smiling leaders. Instead, they showed the truth. Videos of dry homes. Pictures of empty water tanks. Faces of people with cracked lips. A contract with a mark of the Waterlords. A single line typed by Sierra's mother. I sold my voice for water. The station did not sleep that night. Crowds formed without anyone ordering them to. People from many species and many lives gathered together, drawn by shared anger and shared pain. They did not come with weapons at first. They came with questions. Why is water a luxury? Why are children hungry? Who decided silence was a fair price for life? Security forces arrived, but many lowered their weapons when they saw babies in their parents' arms, when they saw old P. The white tower of the water lords glowed in the artificial daylight of the station, clean and bright like it belonged to another world. Below it, the crowd grew larger with every passing minute. People came from the worker rings, from a market, from dark tunnels and broken rooms. Some came walking. Some came limping. Some came pushing small children in makeshift carts. No one told them to come. They just did. Jay stood among them, not above them. He felt the crowd like a beating heart. There was fear in that heart, yes, but there was also strength. Something that had slept for a long time was now awake. Not only anger, but dignity. High above, behind layers of glass and guards, the water lords were watching. They were not used to being watched back. Alarms blinked silently in their offices. Data flowed across their desks. Power lines had been cut. Backup systems strained. Their screens now showed the same images the whole station saw. Dry mouths, empty tanks, silent throats, and a single sentence typed by a mother who had nothing left to trade. I sold my voice for water. That line was not loud, but it was impossible to ignore. Inside the tower, guards moved into position. They wore bright polished armor and held weapons that hummed with deadly light. They were trained to control riots. They were trained to scare people into going home. But as they looked out at the crowd, they did not see criminals. They saw families. They saw people who looked like their own parents. Some even saw friends. A command came through their earpieces. Hold the line. Do not let them approach. But orders sound different when you're staring directly into the eyes of thirsty children. Jace walked slowly through the crowd until he reached the front. He did not shout. He did not wave his arms. He simply stepped where fear usually stood and did not move back. People around him felt his calm and grew calmer too. Calm is powerful. Calm is dangerous to tyrants. At that moment, Lura's work reached its peak. The giant hollow display above the tower flickered, then changed. Now it showed something new, a recording from hidden cameras near the voice harvester room. The screen showed a chair, bright lights, and a thin woman with violet skin holding onto her stomach like someone trying to hold in her soul. Sierra's mother. The device was placed at her throat. She looked toward a tank filled with clear water. She nodded once. Light flashed, then silence. The crowd did not scream. They whispered. The whisper grew like wind through tall grass, soft at first, then stronger. Enough. The water lords could feel it through the walls of their tower. For the first time in years, they were not the strongest people in the room. The strongest people were outside, standing shoulder to shoulder with empty cups and full hearts. One of the main doors of the tower opened with a slow sigh. Not because the lords wanted it, because the guards did. They stepped aside. Some switched off their weapons. Some put them down. One even took off his helmet and left it on the ground, as if it was heavy shame he no longer wanted to carry. The lords had no shield left. A small group walked out to face the crowd. They wore perfect clothes and perfect smiles, smiles that did not work anymore. Their eyes were nervous. Their hands shook when they tried to pretend they were in control. Jace did not step forward alone. He turned and looked back. From the crowd, people moved with him. A tire doctor, an old mechanic, a mother with a child on her hip, a cleaner with wet gloves still hanging from his belt. Voices rose, not shouting but steady and clear. Water is life. Water is not your property. No more silent throats. The Lord tried to talk first. Their speaker, a tall man with silver rings on every finger, lifted his chin and began to say words like regulations, temporary crisis, and market balance. The crowd did not accept those words anymore. They did not come for speeches filled with careful lies. They came for truth like clean water. Jace finally spoke. His voice was not fancy. It was simple, like the words carved by Sierra in dust. He told them about the child eating mud. He told them about a mother who traded her voice for a cup of life. He pointed toward the lower decks and said that suffering in shadows was still suffering. He did not threaten them with violence. He threatened them with something worse for cruel men: exposure. "Everyone is watching," he said quietly. "Other stations. Other worlds. Your names are known now." The lords looked at the cameras they could no longer control. For the first time, fear lived in their eyes instead of in everyone else's. The crowd waited, not begging, expecting. That difference is everything. The lords spoke in hurried whispers among themselves. Their voices were small without money to support them. They understood that pipes and weapons could not help them here. So they did some. The tower was quieter now. The shouting had faded. The crowd still waited outside like a living sea, but the waves had become calm. No one moved away. No one forgot why they came. They were waiting for something deeper than water. They were waiting for justice. Jace walked inside the white tower with steady steps. His boots echoed on the clean floor. It was strange to walk through halls that smelled of flowers and fresh air after spending time in the dark tunnels below. It felt like two different worlds had been built on top of each other, one to shine and one to suffer. A few of the water lords walked beside him, but they did not walk like rulers anymore. Their shoulders were lower. Their eyes were heavy. They could not hide behind numbers or contracts now. They had to look at the result of their choices. They led Jace into a room full of machines. The lights were soft and cold. Metal tables stood in neat rows. Cabinets were filled with glass containers and thin silver devices. In the center of the room stood the machine he had seen on the hollow screen. The voice harvester. It was not loud. It did not scream evil. It was quiet, clean, smooth, almost beautiful in a cruel way. A thin ring of light circled the open frame where a neck would rest. Jace felt anger rise in him again, but he kept his voice calm. "This is the one," he said. A technician nodded. The man's hands were shaking. Maybe he had helped run it before. Maybe he had told himself it was just work. Today, he could not lie to himself anymore. Beside the machine stood Lura, the insectoid engineer, and two more specialists, one human, one alien healer with gentle glowing eyes. They had come as soon as they heard the plan. They were not promised money. They came for something better than payment, to fix what had been broken. Lura ran her hands over the device, 6 arms moving with quiet skill. She frowned as she studied it. "It does not only take sound," she said softly. "It takes the resonance of memory. That is why it hurts so deep." The healer nodded. "But if something is taken, something can also be given back." They worked fast but careful. Panels opened. Wires shimmered. Screens filled with bright lines and waves of light. Jace did not understand every detail, but he understood the feeling in the room. It was the feeling people have when they refuse to lose. Outside, word spread. They were trying to return a voice, people whispered, and hope moved through the crowd like electricity through metal. Jace sent a message to the lower deck. "Kulme." Soon, Sira and her mother arrived, slowly, helped by neighbors who treated them now like family. The mother's steps were weak. Sira walked close to her, one hand always touching her arm as if she were her guardian instead of her child. When they entered the white room, they stopped in the doorway, eyes wide. It was so bright compared to their small shelter. Sira saw the machine and held her mother tighter. Fear is smart. It remembers. Jace knelt and spoke softly to both of them. He told them the plan in simple words. He did not promise perfection. He did not promise miracles. He promised only one honest thing. "We will try," he said, "and we will not hurt you." The mother looked at the machine again, then at her child. She placed her hand lightly on Sira's head and smiled without sound. Her eyes said everything. "If this is the path back to my voice, I will walk it without fear." She sat in the chair. The tower was quieter now. The shouting had faded. The crowd still waited outside like a living sea, but the waves had become calm. No one moved away. No one forgot why they came. They were waiting for something deeper than water. They were waiting for justice. Jace walked inside the white tower with steady steps. His boots echoed on the clean floor. It was strange to walk through halls that smelled of flowers and fresh air after spending time in the dark tunnels below. It felt like two different worlds had been built on top of each other, one to shine and one to suffer. A few of the water lords walked beside him, but they did not walk like rulers anymore. Their shoulders were lower. Their eyes were heavy. They could not hide behind numbers or contracts now. They had to look at the result of their choices. They led Jace into a room full of machines. The lights were soft and cold. Metal tables stood in neat rows. Cabinets were filled with glass containers and thin silver devices. In the center of the room stood the machine he had seen on the hollow screen. The voice harvester. It was not loud. It did not scream evil. It was quiet, clean, smooth, almost beautiful in a cruel way. A thin ring of light circled the open frame where a neck would rest. Jace felt anger rise in him again, but he kept his voice calm. The sound grew. It became a note, then another. They joined together slowly, unsure, like someone learning to walk again. The mother touched her throat in shock. Her eyes widened. She tried again. This time, she spoke one word. Sira. The voice was weak, but it was hers. The child gasped. Then she threw herself into her mother's arms and cried, not quietly anymore. She laughed and cried at the same time, saying nothing, saying everything. The mother held her child and began to cry too, but through crying she began to sing. It was not a human song. It was something older, flowing, full of stars and wind and open skies that no human had ever seen. The room filled with sound that was not just heard by ears, but felt in the heart. It spoke of love, sacrifice, and the unbroken will of a mother. People outside heard it through the open comm systems. The whole station went quiet. For once, silence did not come from fear. It came from awe. Jace closed his eyes and let the music wash through him. He felt something inside him grow lighter. The fight, the anger, the danger. It had all been worth this single moment. A stolen voice had come home. The mother ended the song and rested her forehead against Sira's. She was tired, but different now. Not empty. Whole again. Jace smiled. One promise had been kept. The song slowly faded, like light at the end of a long day. Even after the last note was gone, it stayed in the hearts of everyone who heard it. In the halls, in the lower decks, in the market, in the working rings, people stood quietly and felt something they had not felt in a long time. They felt like things could change. Sira's mother sat still for a moment, eyes closed, her hands around her daughter. The machine beside her was silent now. Its lights were dim. It had taken voices for profit before. Today, it had done the opposite. Today, it had given back something priceless. The healer stepped back with a soft smile. Lura wiped her eyes and pretended it was just dust. Jace did not speak. He understood this was not a moment for his voice. It was a moment for hers. Sira pulled back just enough to look at her mother's face. She waited, afraid to hope again. The mother cupped the child's cheek and spoke softly. Her voice was rough but warm, like fire in winter. "My little one," she said. Sira burst into new tears, but these were different from the tears of hunger or fear. These were tears that come when the world, for once, chooses kindness. She laughed through them, messy and bright, and answered in whispers of her own. The mother looked up at Jace. Words were hard after so long without them, but she still found the strength. "Thank you," she said. He shook his head gently. "You did the hardest part," he replied. "You survived." Outside, the crowd learned the news before anyone spoke it aloud. Hope has a way of traveling faster than sound. Someone heard the song through a speaker. Someone saw Sira's smiling face on a hollow feed. A murmur moved through the people. "She has her voice," someone said. Then louder voices rose, but not angry this time. Laughter echoed. People hugged one another, even if they had never met before. For years, they had shared fear. Now they shared relief. Water flowed. For the first time in years, the pipes in the lower levels carried clear, clean streams. Tanks opened. Fountains that once belonged to the rich alone poured for everyone. Children ran through falling water, screaming in surprise as it splashed their faces. Old people cupped it like a blessing. Thirst loosened its grip on the station. The water lords signed new agreements in front of public cameras. No more voice harvesting. No more cruel contracts. Fair prices. Open records. Their hands shook while they wrote, not because of threat of weapons, but because of the weight of everyone watching. The galaxy had seen them. That is a punishment greedy people fear the most. Jace guided Syrah and her mother back to the lower decks, but they did not feel like the same dark places anymore. People they passed smiled and stepped aside. Someone placed a fresh blanket in the mother's hands. Someone else gave Syrah fruit, bright and sweet, which she bit into with delighted shock. The broken shelter was cleaned. Neighbors worked together without being asked. A new door was built. A small light was hung from the ceiling. It was not luxury, but it was dignity. The mother spoke with others now, slowly, carefully, like someone learning to walk again after being trapped in chains. Every word she said seemed to glow in the air. Every sentence was a small victory. Later, when the station lights dimmed to night cycle, Jay stood alone near a large window that looked out into space. Stars stretched in endless black. Ships drifted like small sparks. He rested his forehead lightly against the glass and let quiet settle inside him. He did not feel like a hero. He felt tired and at peace. Footsteps approached. He did not turn until he heard the soft new voice behind him. "Jace," Syrah said. He turned and smiled. She stood there with her mother, both of them bathed in starlight. Syrah held the smooth carved stone she had given him earlier. She lifted it, offering it again. "It is yours," she said. He closed her fingers around it gently. "No," he said, "it is yours. You will tell stories one day. You will need something to hold while you tell them." The mother nodded. She understood. Their story was not only pain anymore. It was strength. It was survival. It was song returned. Jace walked back to their home one last time. There were words he could say, but he chose something simpler. He placed his hand over his heart, then over his mouth, then toward them in quiet salute. Humans sometimes say goodbye that way when words are too small. He left before anyone could call him hero or ask him to stay. He preferred to move on, like wind that visits and goes. On his way to the docks, he heard people whisper about him. The human did this, some said, but others corrected gently. "No," they said, "we all did this. He just reminded us we could." He liked that version better. On his ship, the engines warmed. The stars opened ahead of him like a road without end. He thought about one truth that followed humans across the galaxy. They break things, yes, sometimes. They make mistakes. They are loud and stubborn and strange. But when something is wrong, truly wrong, humans do something very simple. They refuse to accept it. They stand up. They fight quietly or loudly, but they fight for children, for water, for voice, for dignity. And when they leave, they do not leave emptiness. They leave stories. Somewhere, on a distant world, Syrah would grow older and tell this one. She would say, "There was a day I ate mud, and there was a day my mother sang again. Between those 2 days stood a human who would not walk away." Jace's ship lifted off. The station grew smaller in the window. The stars waited. And the galaxy carried a new story about humanity, not of conquest or fear, but of something stronger. Humans see pain, and they answer it with hope.